now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for September 26th. Well, everything's become a lot more intense in the wide world of tropics with two major hurricane strength systems, Sam, which is now a Category 4, and Mindulle, which is rapidly intensified into a super typhoon, now a Category 5. It's also joined by Tropical Storm Gulab in the North Indian Ocean, and the remnants of Peter, which now also have a chance of reformation as well. So here we are, day 118 of the Atlantic hurricane season. Sam is a Category 4 hurricane with winds of 150 miles an hour, with also Peter with the 20% of reformation, and two other areas of interest behind Sam with 60 and 20% chances of formation respectively. In the Eastern Pacific, it's day 134 and there's nothing active and really nothing expected the next 5 days. The basin has been oddly calm this month with only one named storm forming. Of course, that was Olaf, which did strike Baja as a Category 2, but it's been relatively inactive in the Eastern Pacific this month. In the Western Pacific, the only thing to highlight is Super Typhoon Mindulle, which just became a Category 5 by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, and as a result, Force 13 has followed suit. It is expected to remain a pretty formidable typhoon for quite some time there. In the North Indian Ocean, there is Tropical Storm Gulab, which is about to make landfall in India in the next 12 to 24 hours, and rapidly weaken inland, although there is a chance that it could reform afterwards, this time in the Arabian Sea, so that is something that we're going to be having to monitor in the next few days. Here's the Atlantic satellite imagery, and you can see Sam's progress as it has done an incredible job in terms of its stages today of continued organization, a merger eyeball replacement cycle which helped it to continue intensifying and remain with a small eye, of course, so that is something that we've been watching. In the Eastern Pacific, you can see what's going on here, not really much to really speak of, just some normal activity that you really wouldn't say that is different from the normal here. And really all that trace of any kind of disturbance is pretty much gone at this point. In the Western Pacific, you can see what's going on here. The eye is trying to get itself more organized on Mindulle. It's kind of hard to believe it's a Category 5 considering the fact it's still in the stages of its eye clearing out, but nonetheless, it is one by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, and it is expected to stay one for some time at the moment. But thankfully, it's not a threat to land until it gets towards Japan, which means that that area needs to be watching out. In the North Indian Ocean, I finally get to say that there's something besides monsoon activity because, of course, Gulab is now existent. I expect to bring some heavy rains and potential gusty winds to parts of eastern India there. Here's the satellite imagery on Mindulle here, and you can see its eye coming back out. It went under an eyewall replacement cycle earlier, which kind of weakened it temporarily, but since has rebounded and profited off that eyewall replacement cycle, significantly intensifying in now a Category 5, of course. In the Eastern Pacific here, the sea surface temperatures, we're looking at 28 to 29 across the main parts of the Pacific, with those temperatures around 30, hugging the Baja Peninsula coast there. The Gulf of Mexico, the temperatures have cooled slightly in the immediate coast, now down to 27, while much of the Caribbean and main development region remain around 28 to 29, with some areas around 30 degrees Celsius. That is something that is interesting to note there, and almost every trace of Larry is gone at this point. In the North Indian Ocean, you can see the temperatures are around 29 to 30 degrees Celsius, where Gulab is. Sorry, I keep forgetting some of the names at this point. Arabian Sea is slightly cooler. In the Western Pacific, you can see what's going on here. 30 degrees Celsius temperatures is what we're seeing here, especially as you head eastward to the Philippines. The Southern Hemisphere, of course, looking rather cool, still around 25 to 27 degrees Celsius, which of course is to be expected for this time of year. Moving it over to the sea surface temperature anomalies, the Western Pacific is looking above average, same thing with the Atlantic. The Eastern Pacific is looking 1 to 2 degrees above average, but you can still see the notability of the La Nina developing. The Central Pacific is looking below average, and the Arabian Sea is barely above average. Well, that brings us over to the On This Day, and today we have Kitsana, the only tropical system active on this day in 2009, but a very notable one at that. Kitsana was making landfall in the Philippines and would later bring over $6 billion of damage, along with it 789 deaths. So just to show that a tropical storm doesn't have to be that strong to produce some really significant rainfall that could very well lead to some easy damage tolls as a result. So unfortunate that this happened. Of course, Ketsana would eventually get retired as a result, and we're not going to be seeing that name anymore anytime soon, ever. And of course, on this day, products are brought to you by Cyclone History. In the Atlantic, the last two names of the list are Victor and Wanda. If we run out, we will start the auxiliary list, starting with Adria. In the Eastern Pacific, we're looking out for Pamela and Rick, and in the Central Pacific, while Roblox may be powering Imaginations, it won't be powering Hone anytime soon. In the Western Pacific, we'll be looking out for Tly and Rock and Kompasu. In the North Indian Ocean, we are still looking out for Shaheen and Jawan, which are now the next two names now that we have Gulab. Of course, October and November are going to be the time that we see more of those North Indian Ocean storms, so Gulab is the beginning yet again. Southwestern Indian Ocean, the next two names are Anna and Batsire. In the Australia region, we're looking out for Patty and Ruby. And in the South Pacific, we're looking out for Cody. We'll be back for another Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow night.